satellite array that back in January and February, we were dealing with a different Russia. And Russia was never the aggressive and dangerous power aimed at destroying NATO, by no means, under any circumstances. And their military was enough for the defense of Russia, and that was about it. That's changed, and we have affected that change. I would also point out that Russia has a martial history and a very rich military culture. And they have enormous industries that are now completely revved up to the maximum extent possible to produce not only weapons and munitions, but also to support a much larger military establishment. And that's what we're seeing emerge right now. This 300,000 man reserve mobilization is largely complete, and most of them have been integrated into formations and units that are forming up for this future offensive. But in many areas, this mobilization quietly continues, with the result that you could see a much larger force in January and February than 700,000. And I've tried to point that out to people. It's all that it needs in terms of high-end conventional military power to deal with us if we try to intervene, as well as with the Ukrainians. They don't need nuclear weapons to deal with us. The second part is that our forces on the ground in Europe are very small. We have 100,000 troops in Europe. Well, that comes to maybe 25, 30,000 combat troops. That's not very much. The Polish military, which was larger and more robust a couple of decades ago, has actually gotten smaller, and it has very little armor. And what it has is this very large, heavy armor that we utilize, which means that it can't use any of the bridges in Ukraine that it may have to cross. The Romanian military is not in great shape, and the Romanians are not a martial people and have no great history of military power. So you're looking at a multinational force that may appear to be robust on paper, but really isn't, and takes you into our air power. And the air power that we have is substantial, but it's a shadow of what it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we had thousands of fighters. Today, we'd be lucky to get 500, 600, 700 into the air over Ukraine. And in contrast to 1990 and 91, thanks to precision-guided microcircuitry that goes into all of the missiles, and thanks to the microcircuitry that allows computers in various radar arrays to compute solutions in fractions of a second, we're likely to lose a lot of that aircraft. So we are not, at least in reality, quite what Lyle thinks we are. In fact, I would argue that we are a shadow of our former selves militarily. So I'm much more concerned about the possibility that we go in and we end up taking losses, and that we are the ones that then fall back on the nuclear weapon. I don't think the Russians have any need for it. And if you look at the strikes that have been going on over the last few weeks, it's very impressive. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the Russians have the satellite-based reconnaissance, surveillance, intelligence assets and collection assets that we do. And in addition to that, they have the means to put our satellite array